The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. When the days were completed for their purification according to the law of Moses, the parents of Jesus took him up to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord, just as it has written in the law of the Lord, that every male who opens the womb shall be consecrated to the Lord and offer the sacrifice of a pair of turtle doves and 2 young pigeons, in accordance with the dictate of the law of the Lord. Now there was a man in Jerusalem whose name was Simeon, a righteous man, devout, awaiting the consolation of Israel, and the Holy Spirit was upon him. And as it had been revealed to him by the Holy Spirit that he should not see death before he had seen the Christ of the Lord, he came in spirit into the temple, and when his parents brought the child Jesus to perform the custom of the law in regard to him, Simeon took him into his arms and blessed him, saying, "Now, Master, may your servant go in peace according to your word. For my eyes have seen your salvation, which you prepared in the sight of all the peoples, a light for revelation to the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel." The child's father and mother were amazed at what was told about him, and Simeon blessed them and said to them, Mary, his mother, "Behold, this child is destined for the fall and rise of many in Israel, and to be the sign that will be contradicted. And you yourself a sword will pierce, so that the thoughts of many hearts may be revealed." There was also a prophetess, Anna, the daughter of Phanuel of the tribe of Asher. She was advanced in years, having lived 7 years with her husband after marriage, and then as a widow until she was 84. She never left the temple, but worshiped night and day with fasting and prayer. And coming forward at that very time, she gave thanks to God and spoke about the child to all who were awaiting the redemption of Israel, of Jerusalem. When they had fulfilled all the prescriptions of the law of the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their town of Nazareth. The child grew and became strong, filled with wisdom, and the favor of God was upon him. The gospel of the Lord. Child grew, became strong, filled with wisdom, for God's favor was upon him. We are family. I've got all my sisters with me. In 1979, the championship World Series Pittsburgh Pirates, as they were on their way to the championship, appropriated this song by the Philadelphia group, Sister Sledge. So thinking we are a family that's working really hard, just like a family, we're pulling together to become the champions, and they did that year. I don't know that the Pirates have been all that good since then, unfortunately. I'm still a Pirates fan, but you need faith. But that was a great way of them capturing a sense of how hard it was to pull together, to be like a family, not just a team, although I would argue that families require a lot of teamwork, and vice versa. Teams, in some ways, do need a more serious bond in order to become a great team. Well, when I was a Jesuit novice, we were told that we were to live the vow of poverty as a family of simple means. That's, I think, how it was articulated in our constitutions. A family of simple means. Well, the simple means part I could get, that you can figure out. Being a family, I think that's more complicated. And I would argue that in some decades since, I've thought, well, my family in some ways may be more complicated than my life among the Jesuits. My Jesuit family is not as, you might say, complicated with regards to the complex of relationships, the ways in which we can be together, as my biological family, my family whom I love greatly. But I think there's a way in which that good work, that hard work of being a family, and is something that we all need to really, maybe on this feast of the Holy Family today, consider and look at, especially with regards to these readings today, where we have a sense that this family that comes into the temple to do what they're supposed to do by way of rituals, which means they've finally gotten some stability and settlement in their life, because remember, the story of this young family, they've coming from an unwanted pregnancy and fearing for their lives. They had to flee their own home country and become refugees in Egypt. And so there's a way in which so much trauma and disturbance in this own family's life now has finally settled down, and they can step back into at least the rituals of their religion, their faith tradition, and be able to get this child blessed. And why wouldn't you? Given the world that can be quite hostile, you want that child to have whatever protections it can have, whatever blessing it can have. And here is these older people in the temple who are willing to see the specialness of this family and this child. Although they may, in fact, dote on this child and praise this family for their child, there's still this sort of strange mix of this child, as Simeon says, will be special, but he will be the cause of fall and rise of many, and it's going to cost you, he says to the mother. No mother wants to hear that at the beginning of their child's life as they're raising this baby. But parenthood has its own complications too, right? Maybe one of the reasons that we at times looking for a grace in our own family life is because those who lead our families, parents of all sorts, find themselves often in a situation where they can't predict what's going to happen to their child, to their family. They don't always know what the future will hold, and certainly you may plan some things out, you may have expectations, but those will always change, right? There's always a way in which we find out our children have their own lives, go on and do their own things. And in many ways, we have to be family with them and for them, even though at times it may not be what we all agree on by way of how we should be together, how we should be a family. I remember many years in Chicago when I was working at St. Ignatius Parish there was a woman in her 80s, a wonderful woman. She had had a whole history as a young woman and working through Catholic Action, very involved in her faith. And she sort of made herself my informal mentor, which I welcomed. And at one point after we had had a reconciliation service and we had just sung this song, I Want to Be a Child of God Again, she came up to me and she said, "You know, Dan, that song, I don't buy it. I want to be a child of God again." She said, "I've never not been God's child. I'm always God's child." And she said, "You know why I believe that? It's because even as I've raised my own 8 kids, and there was a time when I had to tell one of my kids, you got to get out. I kicked them out of my own home for good reason, but that was still my child, and I still loved that child, and I still hoped for and would do anything for that child, but I couldn't have them in my house until things changed." It was a kind of tough love that she had to exercise, but still her child. And I thought, good on her. Her experience of the complications and the not perfectness of family life taught her that God's grace often works with us, and even at times when we can't be the perfect family, where we can't even at times be completely together as we would like, we then know that we nonetheless go forward and depend by the grace of God, kind of by the seat of our pants. Nobody's qualified to be a perfect member of a family, and certainly there's no perfect parent out there. Everybody and every parent knows that they depend on stepping into the role and grace to work on good effort. Good effort combined with God's grace allows for that to be the case. And so I think there's a way in which we might want to consider on this Feast of the Holy Family how it is for you and for me that we are family. We have families of all sorts. But in all of those possible ways in which we can be family or try to be family, we nonetheless need God's grace, God's power. And today's readings ask us to really consider that, all the way from the Old Testament, where Abraham and Sarah had, in fact, begged to have a family, and they finally were given a son, Isaac. And that young man, at one point, God tested Abraham by saying, "Can you give up Isaac?" And thank God he didn't have to go through with that test. Or as Abraham then later was wandering in the desert, trying to establish a home for his family and his people that he was leading, he was wandering around without knowing where he was going, often the way our families may sometimes seem. We're moving forward, but we don't know where this is going to go or how it's going to be. And so, friends, I think there's a way in which you and I might want to consider that for our part, we've got to be able to allow ourselves to continue to be God's child, and to know that that grace that God's constantly offering us, no matter what, is a grace we need to grab onto and let it work in our families with our good effort, so that we can step forward together in whatever way we can, and let that grace allow us to become maybe not a world champion team, but certainly a family of love, a love that allows us to work through whatever the challenges are, whatever the imperfections are, and step into the grace of God that allows our good effort to become something more and something better. Family by family, community by community, then, we're able to exercise a familial love of one another that allows the world to be more loving. And so, friends, that love starts at home. It starts with those who are our family in one way or another, sometimes by choice and other times by circumstance or by birth. In any way, we are family. We've got all our sisters, brothers, friends, and loved ones with us as part of our family in some form. Let us step into this feast of the Holy Family and look for that God who is present and incarnate among us to be our help, our grace, as we are family. God bless and Happy New Year.